I want to first of all start by greeting all of you with a greeting of peace. Every single day, 1.7 billion people across the world greet each other with this simple greeting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings be upon you today. Muslims, yes, wa alaikum assalam, or peace be unto you. Can you hear me now?
Too tall, there you go.
I guess I'm too tall, yeah. All right. I'll lean in a little bit. So, I'm really honored to be with you all, and when David said the national conference is going to be here, I was really excited. And then we had a meeting just a few weeks ago, and I had all these ideas, and David's like, oh man, the planning has already been closed off. But all I want to say is, wherever I have stood and found oppression, and stood wherever it was a protest at DC or anywhere, the loudest voices that I've always found was Veterans for Peace. And so it's a tremendous honor for me here today to stand with you and to be here. All right, how about now? Hey, that's better, okay. So I'm the last speaker, so I'm gonna try to be as abrupt as fast as possible. My story is about war. In 1989, my family lived in northern Somalia, and there was a war, a civil war in northern part of Somalia that drove my family to southern part of Somalia. And I remember as a young child in Mogadishu, which is southern part of Somalia, the children recognized that we had a northern dialect or accent, so they used to tease us by saying, brought here by the bullet. And we responded, unfortunately, by saying, you're waiting for the bullet. And just 2 years later, there was a civil war in Somalia that today, almost 20 some years or 30 years almost, that is still being felt in many parts of Somalia. I remember as a young child looking outside and we lived actually right next to the airport. And I would look out to these planes that flew every single day, and I never had any inclination of leaving home. But I wanted to get on the plane just to see how everything looked from 30,000 feet. But the Civil War, I still remember the most haunting thing that I recall was the non-ending gunfire. That when you went to sleep, you hoped to wake up and it just stopped, and it did not. And my family left Mogadishu very early. We eventually went to a border town, and we were robbed at gunpoint and held hostage in a prison. And literally, in the middle of the night, broke out of this prison and then entered into Kenya, and we're probably the first families that entered. And we were told, you're now going to be a refugee. And when the place they took us was literally an open field. Within 2 weeks of that open field, finally hundreds of people showed up, and there was food and among other things. But I left home because of that war. And what I learned later on was that these wars were never about the real struggle that people have mentioned. But they were being played in dark rooms somewhere across the world. Proxy wars that continue to happen till today. In fact, when we left Kenya, we eventually went to Egypt, lived for a few years, and then came to Minnesota in 1993, and my family settled here. And now today, I like to say I'm as Minnesotan as they get. For some reason, people always think that, because you look a little different, you're not Minnesotan. Trust me, the day you land here, you're a Minnesotan. And I came here in 1993 on February the 16th, and trust me, it was one of the coldest days in my life. I still remember it was so cold that I wasn't used to 70-degree constant weather, which was the temperature inside our apartment. Even that was too cold to deal with. But this story is the same story that I share with so many people. In fact, it's not a unique story. And this is perhaps one of the most the most strangest things about the conversation we were having today about immigration in this country. Most of you can self-identify your history to some form of struggle that led your family to come to this nation. Yet, many people have forgotten about that. In fact, we have a billboard that we're working on that says, white people are not immigrants. The lies that people tell. The reality is, most of us, other than the forced enslaved people who came here and the Native Americans, everyone else came here as an immigrant with a suitcase full of nothing and hope that they could build a better life in this country. With that said, today we are at a historical junction. For the first time, I think in this generation, a large number of people who have been addicted and consumed into, I would consider today's manifestation of entertainment, have woken up because of this administration. Yet many of those people are trying to find what to do. And I believe you are the answer. Because the role of peace and fighting for peace is the moral reasoning and the moral thing that we ought to be focused on. Everything that we see today, all of the challenges that we see today in our society reflect upon peace. Yet, everybody wants to address the symptoms of the issues that exist in our world today. And as Michael was mentioning, peace at home and peace abroad, that's exactly what we need to be fighting for. And so I want to just tell you that today there is a manifestation of violence that we can find in so many places. Whether it's our children's playgrounds as being bullies, to them eventually seeking war for security. In fact, I have not found a single politician, particularly those who even champion themselves for peace, who when the word national security comes up, does not know what to say. I personally believe America's greatest strength, it's also its greatest weakness. The greatest strength of America, it is its experiment in diversity. But I also believe it is greatest weakness. In fact, this past 2 years and a year and a half that we have noticed, all of our enemies are not attacking us on the shores of the United States. In fact, they are penetrating through social media and unhinging the fabric of our communities. There was a protest that happened in Houston that was well documented during the Facebook trials or Facebook hearings, where 2 Facebook pages, one for the community, one against the community, rallied people against each other. In fact, that entire operation was put together by a Russian operative who used $250. So the greatest strength is our diversity. And I always tell this story, which is a reflection of the story that Dr. King really believed in, that you can find today in a cul-de-sac somewhere in a suburban America, 5 homes where 5 children will wake up every single day and they can trace their ancestors back to 5 different continents. And when they come together every single morning at that bus stop and they ride together, they see each other as Americans. But something happens from kindergarten to 12th grade that starts to have them see each other differently. However, I personally believe if we can perfect that, the world is in desperate need for a projection that we can project to them that those 5 children can live in the same suburban cul-de-sac. That is the power of the United States. That is the power that we have, that we can work together, live together. That brown children and Asian children and children of white descendants and children of all other kind of colors or different languages can live together in the same neighborhoods and call each other proudly that they belong to this land called America. So if we can project that, imagine what that means for the rest of the world, who still struggle today on invisible lines called borders, who continue to manifest violence because of the difference of people's languages and religion. If we can project to them that, if we can project that to them, I think we can have a tremendous image of peace around the world. With that said, there is a looming challenge. Many of you are fully aware. And that's a challenge where my country today, Somalia, is still existing. We have moved today from traditional armies to modern mercenaries. In fact, there's a book called Modern Mercenaries, and some of you might be in the same boat I am, but I'm a C-SPAN book TV junkie. That doesn't mean I watch everything, folks. I just watch things that are important to me. But I've noticed something very unique. When Sean McEnroy, who wrote this book, Modern Mercenaries, who discovers this idea of private militaries and the impact they had on the both post-Iraq and Afghanistan war, it's the first time I've seen an author speak about his book and then to have a general sit next to him to denounce everything he just said. But modern mercenaries and private militaries have reformed and changed war today. In fact, they're the invisible war that most people don't know. Today, Somalia, which is coming out of this dark period of time, is now run by a private military. It was so horrible that few months ago that the UAE had a private military base in Somalia, not to protect Somalia, their own private military base for their own interest. And they're using the influx of refugees and immigrants who have nowhere to go as this new form of labor in the form of private military. And it was interesting, this private military then went out from Dubai, who has a station in Somalia, who they're not working in Somalia, they're just training there, and then they could go anywhere. They went to a Somali parliament's house and literally hijacked him and took him into their own compound to imprison him. Think about this. A private military just walks out, grabs somebody, and puts him in their own house. And when this was then looked into, eventually they're still there, but they were like, oh, don't do it again. So today, this is happening across the world. Private militaries are protecting governments, they're protecting nonprofit entities, they're protecting assets, they're protecting businesses across the world. What is the incentive for a private military to end war? No, to end war. There's no incentive. There's absolutely no incentive to end war because their entire paycheck relies upon a continuous battle. And the reality is the private militaries that we're talking, you're thinking about Halliburton. That's like on the top of the food chain. They probably are the cleanest of the groups. But it's the subcontractors who have no ethical boundaries. And that is the reality that we're living today. So finally, I want to end with you a couple of points. My community here in Minnesota is perhaps one of the most visible Muslim populations, particularly the Somali community. And we are very visible. In fact, just 2 days ago, we held one of our Eid prayers at the U.S. Stadium Bank, and people didn't know what to do with themselves. What they didn't realize is we're also praying for the Vikings to hopefully maybe win a Super Bowl. Maybe they will. But again, this idea that you cannot live in this country and practice your religion freely. And not only that, just last summer, one of our mosques was attacked and bombed. And the entire administration, Trump's administration, said it was an inside job, it was a leftist job. Then the reality came a few months back that the people who did this were white supremacists from Illinois who drove through state lines to come almost 100 miles to bomb this mosque. What most people don't know is why would this mosque be a particular target? And the reality is because today we have an insurgence of hate groups across this country. And these hate groups are not your traditional hate groups that you have used to deal with. They're not small, they're not just militia groups, and they're not easy to identify. In fact, the group that really painted the target on this mosque, the name for them is called Friends of Smith Park. Because there's a park right next to the mosque, so they're the friends of that park. And literally, they project themselves as a big organization, but it's just few people. 3 people, I think, or less. But they project as a big organization. And so members of this group have been publishing on their websites and blogs about this mosque. Literally, they would go to the mosque, get on the property, go and look out the windows of classrooms and count the number of children in the classroom to report that back to the city, and continue to harass people who would be attending this mosque. So their blog got picked up by all the hate groups across the country. And that is what we believe was the initial target for this mosque. And so I'm asking you today, number one, I want you to know there's $50 million spent annually to promote Islamophobia in this country. And that's the first level of funding. That's just 33 organizations nationally who we can do a 990 review on. But there are many more organizations who are doing this work. It is an organized machine that is doing this. In fact, regrettably, most of the hate is also being organized in VFWs across this country. And it is happening because of this idea of, we don't know them. We fear them. In fact, every single thing, and I ask this question whenever I present on Islamophobia, I ask the question, why is Islamophobia happening? And the answer always is, what is Islamophobia? Oh, this is because of fear or misunderstanding. No. The answer is, history is repeating. Because everything that's happening to the Muslim community has happened to the Catholics and other communities, and is happening today still to other communities. How do we reverse that? 3 simple things I want to leave you with. We are a nation that is deeply wounded. We are a nation that our wound and the pain of this wound drives us to violence. So in order to overcome that, we have to be conscious about not continuing to polarize by speaking to people who already agree with us. We've done that too long. We have to find ways to open channels to those who have been mostly misinformed. And how do we do that? Number one, you have to become a better listener. Insert yourself in places where you know for sure you are the minority, but become a person who can listen. Listening is a very powerful tool to winning the hearts and minds of people. But also, you allow people to say the bigotry so that they have to wrestle with it, what's out in the open. A lot of people believe in things, but they never get a chance to say it. But once they say it, they have to own it. And that's something through a person who can listen to do that. The second thing is, the opposite of listening, know that you have to fill the spaces that exist in our society. You have to speak up. You have to speak up. The giant majority are silent. And that is something we have to change, especially online. Today we talk more, actually we have more opportunities to talk to each other, but we engage less. That's what the reports say today. That even though we have text messages and phone numbers and social media, human beings are engaging in less conversations than ever done before. So we have to learn how to speak. So especially on social media, how many of you have seen a rotten article, bunch of people who are saying bad things about people? We've seen it every single day. How many of you are like, I don't know what to say? Most of us. We got to change that. I don't care if you want to start smart or not. You should say something in that space. You don't have to wait and argue back and forth with a troll, but say something. Be present. Share your story, because other people are reading more of the comment section than the actual article. We all know that. So we have to be able to exist in those spaces. And in fact, when you start to say something, you also give courage to another person to be able to say something. The third and final thing is, we feel that the media is biased. Yes? Amen? Media is biased, let's be honest. It's a corporation-based information. Yet, we have to give journalists a little bit of leeway here. Every single day, there is something called a kicker. It's called the last 30 seconds they send you off with after doom and gloom. Every night, they're looking for a story to fit in that spot. So I want you to think about this. After the awakening of the civil rights leaders in this country around Black Lives Matter, what did you see on telecast every single night? You saw a little story about a police officer stopping by and giving somebody an ice cream. How do you think that story aired? because they pushed those stories. We, the people who carry the torches of peace, have to constantly pitch the stories of peace, whatever we can. In fact, I know the story of a good story can simmer. They'll actually may like the story, and after a while, they might give you a week or 2 weeks. Eventually, air it sometime down the line. Bad stories, they'll be at your door before you even know it. And that's the reality how this media works. So we have to be able to use the media to be able to project our stories. So every single one of you, can you promise me in this year that you will pitch at least 5 to 6 stories? And remember, your story doesn't have to be crazy. In fact, one of the stories that I saw on local TV was a police officer who was off duty who paid for somebody who forgot their wallet. I mean, come on now, that's a story? So let's project our stories, our narratives of the good work that you have been doing, the stories that you carry, the work that you stand for. That's important. And I guarantee you, if you continue to bombard them and if you continue to exist, you will get our narrative out there. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying if we don't do it, then it's our responsibility, part of that. With that, finally, I wanted to say, all of you know CAIR. I'm the executive director of CAIR, the Council of American-Islamic Relations. And we have chapters in about 35 different regions, in about 25 states, and about 35 major areas. So we would love to continue to work with you. When you go back, get a chance to connect with that CAIR office. In Minnesota, we have an advocates training program that we have started, which is really an opportunity to give folks who are interested in challenging Islamophobia the knowledge base, the information, and ideas and things that we need to start doing. So with that said, I want to end with one thing that I think is clearly important. Recognize in this moment that we're in with this administration, it comes with great opportunity. I know we see the negatives every single day. We see this administration, I think they have a plan for military rally or something like that. I don't even know what that is. But it got canceled, thank God. But the point is, this, as difficult as it is for many of us, I think it's also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to reach out to so many people who are frustrated like you, but need the guidance, need the support, need the connection. There's the indivisibles of the world today. There's so many chapters, so many people who are just ready to make a difference and they don't know where to start. I see tremendous wisdom in this room. I see tremendous wisdom, passion, and service in this room. And we need you. We need you to be able to connect to the generations next who are going to take this further. So mentor folks. Every single one of you should mentor 10 people in your community and talk to them through the process of fighting for peace. We can't do this alone, but we cannot lose this energy that is being built today out of the frustration of what's happening in front of us. So with that, I want to end with a story, a simple story. I'm not going to end anytime soon. No, I'm going to end now. And that's, I went to an area here in St. Cloud, which has a lot of tension, and I gave this presentation about Islamophobia, and a gentleman came up to me, looked like he was angry, and he's like, I got a question for you. And I was just setting up the microphone and just getting up to the stage, and he's like, I said, the program hasn't started yet. We'll do questions at the end, and I'll connect with you if your question doesn't get answered. He was a little rough, and he looked a little rough, older guy, and he was wearing an orange hat. And I'm a deer hunter, so, an orange hat, I know what that means. So he left, and then I ended the presentation, and then I seeked him out in the audience, and I went to him and said, did you get your question answered? And he said, you answered it in the talk. So I asked him to explain. He said, I know what is happening to you now. And he explained himself by saying, I am an Irish Catholic. And everything that you're saying is happening to your community happened to us. I remember sitting at the dinner table with my parents. And I remember the vile feelings and the tendencies and the hatred that came toward my community. And he said, if that is repeating, then I'm going to take part in effort of challenging it. Why am I telling you this story? Because so many people who we think are misguided out of vengeance or evil are not. They just need to be spoken to. They need to be connected to. And I guarantee you, if you tell them that shared story of struggle that we all carry, that is our ticket to connecting to people. With that said, have a wonderful, wonderful conference. We'll be here around and to support any of you. I'll hang around for a little bit at the end, and I'll also provide some more material about CAIR. With that very much, carry on the most noble work, which is to provide peace in this world. God tells us in the Quran, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَكُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When the ignorant and arrogant people come to you, seek out peace. Thank you very much.